Um, very happy to be here. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you're all safe and healthy. And thanks for taking the time to attend this webinar. It's about a pretty popular topic, making money as a musician. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dave Cool. That is actually my real name. I work for Bandzoogle, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. And it's always special for me to participate in anything folk music Ontario related. For those of you who don't know me, I was on the board of directors for Folk Music Ontario for a few years. I think there's only 3 conferences, events that I've missed since 2006, I believe. So it's an organization and a community that's very, very dear to me, and also very important for Bandzoogle. And we have so many amazing members of the community who use Bandzoogle to power their websites, which of course we love. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And apologies, everyone. Okay. So 21 revenue streams for musicians. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different ways that you can make money as an artist. Quick note that FMO is going to be sending out the full slide presentation to everyone that signed up for the webinar. So if I talk too fast, of course, we'll have questions afterwards. I'm willing to spend as much time as there are questions. I'll hang out. But if you want to copy the slides, those will be sent out to everyone, I believe, tomorrow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Bandzoogle. I'm going to go through these slides quickly, just for those of you who don't know what Bandzoogle is and what we do. So we power websites for musicians. It's a website and direct-to-fan platform. You can easily build a website and sell your music, merch, all commission-free. We were founded in 2003. We're actually based out of Ottawa, Canada. I'm in Montreal. We're a 100% remote company, so we have staff all across Canada, throughout the United States, Europe, and South America. And we power over 60,000 websites for musicians. So it's an all-in-one platform, so you get your domain and hosting. Music players, of course, we do SoundScan reporting, calendar for live shows and live streams, and you can sell tickets commission-free, live stream tickets commission-free as well. You can build up your mailing list, send out newsletters. You can sell merch, so any type of physical merch, or even digital files like sheet music, videos, things like that. We have an integration with Printful, so you can actually do print-on-demand merch, so you don't have to buy inventory and store it, which is very handy. We have a tip jar feature that we launched right when the pandemic hit, which has been heavily used by our members, of course, the last couple of years. You can do crowdfunding through the platform. You can run fan subscriptions, which is that where we'll talk about this later, but the monthly recurring payments from fans. And just a nice highlight for our members who have now sold over $87 million worth of music merch, tickets, all that fun stuff. Totally commission free. We don't take any cut of sales. Go straight from the fan to the artist, which we're very proud of. And of course, all the design tools, preset templates that you can completely customize. They're mobile friendly. You can choose the colors, the fonts, upload custom fonts. It's very customizable. You get all your detailed data, analytics in your dashboard. And we have integrations with a whole bunch of different services, including Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those things. Probably the best feature that Bandzoogle has is our support team. They're online 7 days a week. Most of us at Bandzoogle are either current or former musicians. So we're basically a company of artists helping other artists to support them online. So if you ever want to try Bandzoogle, even if you don't sign up to a free trial or anything like that, you can still chat with our support team 7 days a week. And we have a member benefit for Folk Music Ontario. So if you use the promo code FMO, you get a 3-month free trial instead of 30 days. And then you get a 15% discount off any of the plans. So that's Bandzoogle in a nutshell. Now let's get to the topic at hand. So revenue streams for musicians. This has been true for many years now that musicians have more control than ever over their careers. Many of you record at home and you can distribute easily, sell, stream your music. And there's tons of different platforms and tools to make this easier and more accessible. But of course, one of the biggest challenges is still, how do you put that all together and generate revenue? So whether it's through gigging or live streaming, selling merch, licensing your music, it's super important that you diversify your revenue streams so that you can, take all of these different revenue streams and then hopefully build a sustainable, long-term career. And I'll be upfront, some of these revenue streams I'm going to talk about, you can be like, well, duh, of course, Dave Cool. But I'm hoping this presentation helps to spark some ideas, maybe make you look at things a little bit differently, or you'll be inspired by some of the things where you want to try something again based on the information in this presentation. So I hope it is helpful. And again, I'll get through these slides, and there's a bunch of resources within these slides, as you'll see, links to free guides, blog posts. Again, you'll get a copy of the slide presentation, so you can click through the PDF and go directly to all the different resources that are found within the presentation. The idea here is just to make you aware of these things, and then you can dig deeper into the specific revenue streams that you're interested in or you think might be a good fit for your own career. Okay, so we'll start off with number one, selling CDs. It's less than it used to be, but the fact is millions of CDs are still sold every year. And actually, CD sales went up in 2021 for the first time in years. That's mostly because of Adele releasing music, but it's interesting that the format still lives. It's obviously, and for many of you in the folk community know that it's a great way to make a little bit of extra money at gigs, especially if you are at the merch table and you're signing them. It's a nice little souvenir for fans at your shows. We had, during the pandemic, there was one of our members who, they're pretty big YouTubers. They have over 1 million YouTube subscribers, and they released a signed limited edition CD through Bandzoogle. They did a pre-order, and their limited run was 10,000. So they each band member signed 10,000 copies of this CD. And they ran a pre-order, and we were warned at Bandzoogle, like, hey, heads up, this is happening. Like, this is going to be a lot of sales at once. We're like, great. So of course, no problem. We can handle it, which was true. But we weren't sure, like, are they really going to sell 10,000 CDs? They sold out. So they were charging $50 for a CD, because they were signed by the band members, and they sold 10,000 CDs in less than 24 hours. So we were a bit blown away. And then they released the non-signed version of that CD the next day, and I think they only sold a few thousand copies. Only sold a few thousand copies of those. But it was just great example of, on obviously a larger scale, but of a band going direct to fan. They have a good relationship with their audience. They put out something kind of special, limited edition, and got amazing results. So a little anecdote for you. So obviously the upsides of selling CDs is they're pretty low cost. You can get them made for really, really cheap. It's a great merch item for live shows. It's not necessarily applicable to all genres. Folk community, I'd say it's definitely applicable. And if you're not playing live, probably not an essential merch item. But again, if you sign them, do some kind of limited edition, special edition, I think it could be actually very useful resource. So some resources for selling CDs. If you're in Canada, it could be on the next slide. For everyone else, CD Baby has disc manufacturing. There's Unified Disc Manufacturing in Los Angeles. You can sell your CDs commission free on Bandzoogle, of course. In Canada, there's probably a lot of local options, but there's duplication.ca, which I had used for many projects in the past. Same thing with Indiepool, which is based in Toronto. So just some resources for you to be aware of. So number two is selling vinyl. Vinyl sales keep going up. And I believe it was in 2020, they surpassed CD sales for the first time in 34 years. Interestingly, Spotify released a survey last year across all genres and fans of all genres. And vinyl was the top merch choice across almost every genre of music fans of. So it's a very popular merch item. The upsides is that it is a great collector's item. You can, of course, get the vinyl to digital download. It's a great bundling item. Downsides is that it can be expensive to produce, expensive to ship. And these days it can, and I should have added this point, it can take forever to get your vinyl back. The delays because of the pandemic, and the supply chain, the delays can be pretty significant. So if you are planning to release vinyl, plan way ahead, maybe almost a year at this point, to try to get the timing down. So same resources as before for getting vinyl made in Canada as well. Indiepool and duplication.ca also do vinyl. So you can check them out for that. Cassettes. I'm not sure if anyone, I'd be curious afterwards if anyone here has tried making cassettes. It became a pretty popular request at Bandzoogle for us to add cassettes as an option in the music feature. So we had, the digital download, CD, vinyl version, and we added cassettes. Cassette sales have doubled during the pandemic. It was starting from quite low. And it's still a niche format, but again, it can be a really unique item to offer through your online store or to your fans at shows. Again, upsides, nice collector's items. They're relatively cheap to produce, especially compared to vinyl, but still very niche format, I would say. CD Baby doesn't do cassettes, but Unified does. And in Canada, Indiepool and duplication.ca do cassette manufacturing, which is interesting. So so definitely check them out if you want to get like price quotes, just to see what that might look like if you're thinking about it. Downloads, digital downloads. So it's obviously one that many artists are familiar with, whether it's through your own website or a platform like Bandcamp. Digital downloads remain a significant source of revenue for a lot of independent artists that are selling music online. In 2020, we're working on our 2021 data. It just wasn't ready in time for this presentation, but we're going to release an infographic hopefully next month that's going to show all the data from 2021. But in 2020, Bandzoogle members sold over $500,000 worth of digital albums directly to their fans through their websites. And if you look at some of the statistics coming out of Bandcamp, it's really quite impressive how many fans are still buying digital downloads. And I'm not convinced that people are buying the downloads and necessarily loading those downloads onto a music player or their phone or something like that. But I think it can be more of a way for fans to support artists. Instead of streaming their music, they'll buy the downloads because they know that the artists are making more money off that, especially if you're going direct to fan on your website or through Bandcamp. So it's still an option to have for your fans. So again, upsides, you can sell directly to your fans and keep more of the money. You can collect email addresses by selling directly to your fans, which is super important because those emails that you collect, they belong to you. That's your database. If you use Bandzoogle's built-in mailing list and you quit, if you decide to leave Bandzoogle for some reason, you take that database of fans and you bring it with you, which is super powerful. And resources. So obviously for selling digital downloads, like I mentioned, you can do it directly through your website and of course through Bandcamp. And we've got a guide that we update every year. It's the complete guide to selling your music online. It really goes over when and where to sell your music, starting with those platforms that you own and control, and then branching out from there. So how to put that into an overall release strategy. And I talked about selling music through your website. And very quickly, for those of you who don't have a website or aren't sure if you still need a website, the 4 biggest reasons to still have a website as an artist is that first and foremost, you own the address. So you are guaranteed to own that little slice of the internet. So your fans in the industry will always be able to find you there. It's for those of you who are old enough attending this webinar to remember MySpace. A lot of artists built up their fans on MySpace, and when MySpace went away, then you had to start over on Facebook, and so you want to have a place online where you own and control it. You collect emails, and so you can solidify that direct to fan relationship. And your website's one of the best places to do that. Also, you own the experience, so hopefully you're not putting a bunch of ads and links, taking people away from your own website. You don't have any design limits, so you can brand it exactly how you want. Again, you own the data, all the data analytics that's from people visiting your website, and when you're collecting emails, that all belongs to you. And of course, you earn more money, the topic of today, by selling direct to your fans. So if you don't have a website and are thinking of making one, or if you have a website and are thinking of maybe doing a redesign, We have this free guide on the Bandzoogle blog. We update it every year. It was just updated and posted last week, the new version. It's called How to Make a Website for Your Music. It's not specific to Bandzoogle. It's specific to musicians. So you don't have to be using Bandzoogle for this guide to be useful. It's just, best practices for making a website for your music. Okay, so number 5 is revenue from streaming music, which can be a whole webinar to itself, and it can be a bit of a controversial topic, because streaming music payouts tend to be quite small. But it's always a good idea, and the overarching theme of all these revenue streams is to give your fans of every level some way to support your career. So some of them are going to contribute to your crowdfunding campaign. Some of them are going to sign up for your monthly subscriptions. Some of them might just buy digital downloads. Some might come to your show. And some might just stream your music on Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon. The important thing is to make sure that you have all of these opportunities for fans to support you. And streaming is obviously, an important one these days. And there's not a ton of revenue per stream. It can add up over time. It's something that can be very important for music discovery and helping you to reach more fans that you might not have otherwise. And I've got just a couple of examples of artists that are known to the folk community who have showcased at FMO over the years. Who independently, I believe he now works with management and perhaps a label, I'm not sure. But independently, he kind of took off on Spotify. He was added to a couple of key playlists, and now he has over 750,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and a bunch of his songs now have millions of streams each. And when all this started, he was doing it himself. His wife is his manager, and hard work, pounding the pavement, getting out there, showcasing. I remember seeing that FMO and Folk Alliance. His career really took off, and Spotify was one part of that. Same thing with Abigail Lapel, who's another artist known to this community. She has had really nice success on Spotify with over 125,000 monthly listeners. And she has a few songs with millions of streams on them. So, and again, independent artists. So you can find success on streaming platforms. It won't necessarily result in huge money necessarily, but you can leverage that. And again, it's one piece of the overall puzzle of, generating a full-time living as a musician. So upsides from revenue from streaming music is you get paid every time your song is played. Problem is the payouts are quite small for that, but it can be great for music discovery. The challenge there is just getting added to playlists, which is what a lot of artists focus their energy and time on these days, obviously, to try to get their music out there and discovered. We are partners with CD Baby for digital distribution. Many of you might already use them. You might use one of the other services. It's all good. Just make sure you're working with a digital distributor to get your music out onto all of the various services. And we have a guide on our blog on how to approach getting your music featured on Spotify playlists. So number 6, playing live show, something that most, I'm sure, of the artists watching this, you all probably perform live. Traditionally one of the best ways to earn an income as a musician, and also one of the best ways to sell merch. There's tons of different venues. I've always found, I came from a kind of a punk rock background in my late teens, early 20s, and I gravitated towards the folk world through Ani DeFranco because I found the DIY ethos was strong in the folk world as it is in punk rock. And singer-songwriters perform anywhere, bars, restaurants, clubs, coffee houses, house concerts. House concerts became, a much bigger thing, and there's different platforms getting involved, but it's something that, the folk community has been doing for many, many years. So lots of opportunities to play live, maybe not right now, understandably. But, it's still a top income generator for musicians when we can all get back to being able to go out to shows. It's obviously great for selling merch. Challenge again, as you all know, is getting good bookings, getting fans out to shows. And obviously the pandemic is making it extremely challenging to stay on top of all those things. A couple of resources, Indie on the Move, which is a service that we've partnered with, and they can help you hands-on to book shows and book tours, run by two musicians, brothers who toured North America many, many, many times, and Gig Salad, which is for private gig booking. So to book things like weddings and private parties and corporate events and things like that. We had a staff member at Bandzoogle who was an opera singer, and he joined Gig Salad when we first started working with them. And within the first week, he got a gig singing the Canadian national anthem at a junior hockey game not far from where he lives. So it's kind of a cool gig for him. So something to check out if you haven't heard of them before. Couple of resources here for live, performing live. We've got a free, all this is free on our blog, but how to get booked at music festivals. One of our members, Bandzoogle members, wrote a post called Booking Your Next Tour, what to do in which order. So if you haven't toured before, just how to organize yourself and the things that you need to think of and take care of in the order in which you should be doing them. So this has been a big one, obviously, the last couple of years is making money through live streams. I'm sure all of us remember, early days in March 2020, you get that notification on Instagram and Facebook, all the time. I'm friends with, and I follow a ton of musicians. So, there's always someone going live somewhere, and it was a great way for all of us to kind of feel connected again. But even when things did go back to normal, and things will, get back to normal again soon, when live shows and touring are back, online shows, I think what it taught everyone, myself included, is that it's still a viable way to connect with your fans and generate revenue, because you're reaching fans from all around the world that you wouldn't necessarily reach through playing live shows locally or even while on tour. So I think it's something, and you're starting to see, larger artists who are either live streaming their shows while on tour, or they have a tour stop that's specifically a live show, which is really interesting. So you're starting to see artists incorporate live shows into their actual touring. So yeah, it's a great way to obviously to generate some extra income, whether you're selling tickets. And Bandzoogle members, I believe, sold 25,000 live streaming tickets in 2020. That number went up actually in 2021. And through some kind of tip jar donation button, that kind of thing. Like I mentioned, Bandzoogle launched a tip jar feature early on in the pandemic. And the combination of those two things, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, our members generate over $400,000 from live stream ticket sales and tips. And there's a band called Enter the Haggis. One of the members is originally from Toronto. They're based a little bit all over the United States. And they, like many bands and artists at the time, March 2020, they had a new album coming out. It was launching mid-March. They had a tour booked, festival dates, everything. And everything got shut down. And so what they did was, and they've always been great with this, they always do something really creative with their fans. They used to take their fans every year they would go to Ireland, all expenses paid, like you would buy a ticket and they would include your flight and hotel and food, and you would tour with the band in Ireland, and a tour bus would take all their fans around Ireland. They've always done these really cool things with their fans over the years. So when everything got shut down for their tour and their album launch, what they decided to do was, instead of having, just releasing the album, saying, hey, well, here's the album, we can't tour because of the pandemic, they did live streams, but they did it in a really interesting way. They have an extensive discography, I believe around 9 or 10 albums. And they did a listening party every 2 weeks on Facebook of each of their albums. So starting from their first album, moving forward. And each of these broadcasts, these live streams, were super well produced. They had pre-taped segments of interviews with the band talking about, the songwriting process and any interesting stories from the recording of that particular album. And on each of these live streams, there was a banner on the live stream that had their website address with a specific URL to donate. And when you landed on that page on their Bandzoogle website, it had the tip jar, and it had the album and any merch associated with that album on the page. So they were getting donations and selling copies of their back catalog. And they did this all the way up to then having a listening party of their new album. And they generated nearly $20,000 US doing these listening parties and selling merch and getting donations and things like that. So it didn't, in talking to the band, it didn't quite make up for the losses from the tour, but they also didn't have the expenses either from the tour. So it was a really smart way for them to engage with their fans and still make up some of the revenue that they lost from the tour. So really nice success story that happened early on in the pandemic. So yeah, obviously can be pretty low cost to do live stream, which is an upside. You can connect with fans worldwide. Downsides, there's a little bit of live stream fatigue, even with webinars. It seems like there's a lot of, everything's online these days. So something I think a lot of artists, learned, the frequency that worked for their own fan base, put it that way, and not to go live all the time necessarily, but to, plan it out and make each one kind of a special event. There's a lot of guides out there for live streaming. Bandzoogle has one as well. The Complete Guide to Live Stream for Musicians goes through all the different platforms and the different ways you can monetize each platform. We added integrations with Vimeo, Crowdcast, and Twitch, so you can actually have the live streams pulled into your website so that you can drive fans to your website. They can leave you tips and buy your merch right on the same page, which is what a lot of our members did. And speaking of merch, selling merch can be pretty significant revenue stream for musicians, both online and at live shows. And it is consistently the top revenue generator for Bandzoogle members in terms of what sells through their websites. Specifically, we don't have data obviously on live shows and things like that. But in terms of selling direct to fan through your website, in 2020, Bandzoogle members sold over $9 million worth of merch directly to their fans. I believe the total revenue generated by Bandzoogle members was about just over 13 million. So really, 3/4 roughly of the revenue was from merch. So, things like t-shirts, CDs, smaller items like mugs, button stickers. You can sell digital items, of course, especially if you're a music teacher, selling video lessons, sheet music, that kind of thing. And of course, print on demand. Printful is one service that we've integrated with, but there's a ton of print on demand companies out there. And what's really nice is, again, you don't have to pay up front to buy like 100 t-shirts and guessing the sizes and the colors that your fans are going to want. We've all probably had that box of t-shirts in our closet or garage, sitting there for years. So print on demand is a nice way to avoid that. There's no upfront cost. You only pay when something actually sells. And I will point out, I think it was in the previous slide, I bolded t-shirts to remind myself. When we integrated with Printful, they're a huge company. They've got manufacturing and warehouses all around the world. And they do, in the music industry specifically, they do print on demand for pretty much all the major labels. And we talked to them about different merch items that we should encourage our members to look at when setting up their print on demand store. And the answer we got back was t-shirts, t-shirts, t-shirts. T-shirts is by far the biggest seller for print on demand. So, they have, I don't know how many items, it's in the thousands. But they said every year it's t-shirts, and around the holidays, maybe some, mugs, some warm socks, maybe, but generally speaking, if you want to get started, come with a couple of t-shirt designs and start there is probably a pretty good bet. Yeah, so in terms of merch, so Unified Manufacturing does all sorts of different merch as well, on top of the vinyl and the cassettes like I spoke about before. And of course, there's Printful, and you can sell all your merch, of course, through your website. And we have a guide to selling band merch online. Again, it goes through just different ideas for merch and kind of the strategy behind selling merch online directly to your fans. Crowdfunding. So, it's something that isn't quite as popular as it used to be, but it's still a great way to engage with your fans and generate revenue that you need to cover the costs of producing and promoting, marketing your album. But it shouldn't be treated simply as a way to make money. It's really about strengthening that connection with your biggest fans and kind of bringing them along that creative journey with you from songwriting through recording to the release of your album, and building that anticipation and excitement around it. So communicating regularly and the creativity of your rewards are key, and with proper planning you can have a lot of success with crowdfunding. So it's a great way to engage with your fans. You can generate significant revenues. We've seen our members raise anywhere from $3,000 to $30,000 and everything in between through their campaigns, again, all directly to their fans. So again, you can run your crowdfunding through Bandzoogle if you're a Bandzoogle member. There's, of course, Kickstarter and Indiegogo and other platforms as well that you can use to run crowdfunding. And we have a blog post here that talks a little bit more about the engagement side of running a crowdfunding campaign and how to really rally your community of fans around your campaign. So fan subscriptions. So this is that model where, and it's certainly gotten a lot more popular the last couple of years. We saw a ton of renewed interest in it when the pandemic, shut down live shows. But with subscriptions, fans pay a monthly fee for access to rewards and content, essentially. So this can be your entire discography plus any new releases. So it's almost like your own personal streaming service that just has your music. And that's the most common thing we see through our platform is, artists charge, let's say, $5 a month, and fans get access to all of their music. They can download it in different formats, MP3, WAV files, and stream it as much as they want, of course, and then they get access to any new songs as well, and sometimes early access as an extra perk for being a subscriber. You can add, you can really be as creative as you want with it. You can obviously preview new videos. You can offer your subscribers merch discounts. It can be a really rewarding way for you to engage with your fans, and gives them a way to support you on a monthly basis, which gives you a recurring revenue stream, which is always nice. So that's the biggest upside is recurring income, and again, creating that really strong connection with your biggest fans. The downsides, some of the, there's we have a whole presentation just on fan subscriptions. If it's something that would interest you, let me know in the chat, and I do have the slides from that presentation that I could send along, but we have a couple of guides on the Bandzoogle blog that kind of go through basically what is in that workshop. But some of the challenges are creating enough content to justify that monthly expense for your fans. And if you are going to be running crowdfunding campaigns or selling merch and music, you just have to plan it out in a way that doesn't interfere with all of your other plans and all the other different things that you're doing. Bandzoogle members make anywhere from a few $100 a month to many $1,000s a month. We can see it in the reports. It's really interesting, and you can see the different ways that artists are engaging with their fans and coming up with these really creative, unique rewards that their fans get access to on a monthly basis. So it can be a significant revenue stream for artists. So here's a couple of resources. So how to sell fan subscriptions on your music website. It's a pretty comprehensive guide on how to go about selling subscriptions. And we came up with a list of all the different ways that you can reward your fans. We came up with 71 ways. And in looking at what our members were doing, I mean, it's incredible, the creativity, and there are way more than 71 ways that you can reward your fans, but that's a pretty good starting point that you can look at and hope it might inspire some unique things that you can apply to your own online fan club. Okay, public performance royalties. So if you're a songwriter, it's really, and I'm sure most of you have already done this, but it's really essentially you sign up with a PRO. It's, in Canada, it's SOCAN. PRO, a performing rights organization, collects royalties on behalf of songwriters and publishers to make sure that they get paid for the use of their music, and then they, distribute that to the rights holders. So whenever a song is played on the radio, on TV, music venues, restaurants, arenas, shopping malls, all that stuff, they must pay for the use of it. So the PRO collects those payments and distributes the money to the proper rights holders, including the performing artists and master recording owners in Canada, which is not the case in the United States. So upsides is collecting your royalties, and there are no downsides. It's really a must to sign up with a PRO. So again, in Canada, it's SOCAN. I'm sure most of you watching this, if you're in Canada, are already a member. In the US, there's a few different options. ASCAP, who we work with, we're incredible organization, BMI, CSAC, PRS for Music in the UK, and APRA Amicos in Australia, if you're based there. So digital royalties, slightly different. So whenever your music gets played on a non-interactive streaming music service, so that means a music streaming service that you can't skip the songs or choose the song. It's being broadcast to you. So that would be like Sirius XM satellite radio, Pandora, different webcasters and cable TV channels as well. So they have to pay royalties on the music that they use. Again, the upside is you're collecting your money, and there is no downsides. You should go collect your money. There's a few different, as a Canadian artist, there's a few different ways to do this. You can join Sound Exchange directly. A Sound Exchange is based in the US. You can join Resound in Canada, who can also collect the US-based royalties as well. This is a great resource from Canadian Musician Magazine. Well, it's getting your money from satellite radio. And there's a lot of different organizations in Canada that you can join, and they have reciprocal agreements with Sound Exchange and other international organizations. So I would highly recommend, if you're interested in this world and want to choose the best way that works for you, to read that article, and then you can go through it and sign up with the organizations that make the most sense for you. Live performance royalties. So this might be one of the most underutilized revenue streams available to musicians. So you can actually earn royalties when you perform live, when you're performing, original music. If you're performing at a licensed venue, the PROs will pay royalties to the songwriters for those performances, because the venues have to pay a licensing fee. So that includes bars, theaters, and any other licensed venues that host live music. This now also includes live stream shows through SOCAN. So if you're not aware of that, they had an initial program, I believe it was with Facebook Live and Instagram. And now for free online shows, they support Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube, and Twitch. And for paid ticketed online shows, live streaming shows, any platform is supported, and the performance royalties are distributed to rights holders as they would be for in-person events. So if you haven't looked into that for live streams, definitely get in touch with SOCAN to find out more about that. So again, the upside is you're collecting the royalties that you're owed. And the downside for this one is that you do have to do some paperwork. That's really it. You have to do the paperwork for each show and apply for each show. But it's money in your pocket. Mechanical royalties. So these get paid to songwriter or rights holders for purchased music, purchased in quotations, because that includes CDs, vinyl downloads, and music streams. And in the US, retailers automatically include these royalties with payments to whichever digital distributor that you're using. Outside of the US, these payments get sent to royalty collection societies to distribute the royalties to music publishers. In Canada, SOCAN can now, and I think it's been a few years that this has been the case, SOCAN can actually now collect these royalties for you in Canada and internationally, which is a huge time saver. So if you aren't collecting those mechanical royalties, or if you're not sure if you are, again, reach out to SOCAN and they can let you know. So again, there's no downsides. Go collect your money if it's owed to you. And again, the resource here is in Canada. Reach out to SOCAN to make sure that you're collecting those royalties. This is a great post that I found on Manitoba Music's website, great provincial organized music association, called Show Me the Money, A Beginner's Guide to Rights and Royalties. So this goes a little bit more in depth into all of the different royalty types and the different organizations that handle them. So as a Canadian artist, how do you navigate all of that? Number 15, licensing your music. It's probably something that some of you have experience with or would like to get more experience with. So if you get your song placed in a movie, TV show, commercial, those productions obviously have to pay a licensing fee, or most do. And they usually pay 2 licensing fees. One is the master use for the use of the recording. The other one is a sync license, which is licensing fee for the songwriters. These fees can vary greatly depending on the budget of the project and how much they want your song. Some productions now, because of competition, like they try to get the music for free because it's exposure, up to the individual artist to decide, but theoretically, you should be paid for the use of your music. Even composing music for film and television can be quite lucrative, or licensing songs that you've already recorded. All of these things can add up to be a pretty significant source of revenue. The downsides to licensing is just getting started, finding placements. That's obviously the common issue, the common challenge, and the fees can really kind of vary from a few $100s to thousands of dollars. We have this great blog post on the Bandzoogle blog called 5 Reasons Indie Artists Are Primed for Sync Success. And it was written by one of our members, a singer-songwriter named Nat J. She's based in Vancouver, and she's an independent artist that pretty much makes a full-time living from licensing her music. And she actually gave a workshop on behalf of Bandzoogle at Indie Week late last year. And it's really fascinating, her approach. And, she really strongly believes that indie artists are in a great place to license their music. And so this blog post explains why. And she's got a bunch of resources online as well for music licensing. So if this is something that you're looking to explore more, or would like to do more of or get started with, highly recommend checking out this blog post and checking out Nat J, because she has just a wealth of knowledge with that world. This is a blog post that's on CD Baby's website, the DIY Musician blog post. If you don't, DIY Musician blog, if you don't know it, you should definitely check it out. Lots of great resources, and this one's called How to Be Wildly Successful at Licensing Your Songs. And we have a quick blog post on just some of the different ways to license your music. So what are the different places that need music that would potentially license it? Okay, we're getting there. Number 16. So this is a relatively new one. Social video monetization. So you can actually earn money when your music is used in videos on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Triller. The fees are different for each platform, but this is all done through your digital distributor. So for most distributors, you have to opt in to their social video monetization program. But then you can start getting payouts from that. So the upsides, it's great for music discovery. There's no extra cost for you to opt in. The payouts can be small because they tend to be per use, not per view of the video. It's if someone used your song in a video and it costs $25, let's say, to use a song in a video, and that video gets viewed 1 million times, you still only get the $25, is my understanding. It's just for the use of the song. But again, talk to your digital distributor about whatever program they have. Again, we work with CD Baby. They have a social video monetization program, but I believe most, if not all, digital distributors have that now. So if you're not opted in, or if you're not sure, just contact their support teams and make sure that you are. YouTube, obviously, there's a bunch of different ways to generate some revenue off of YouTube. If your music is ever used in a video that has ads running on it, YouTube has to pay part of that ad money to the rights holder of the song. That includes, videos on your own channel, as well as if your music's being used in videos on other channels. Again, talk to a digital distributor, make sure that, that you've opted into that. I think it's pretty much a default now that distributors will go and collect that money for you. Again, it's just another way to make sure you're collecting all your money. Just like streaming, those payouts tend to be small, but they can add up over time. CBaby has a great blog post all about YouTube monetization, which goes in depth into all the different ways you can make money off of YouTube as a musician. And one of those ways is actually through sponsorships. So, if you have built up a fan base, music companies, major brands, local businesses might be willing to sponsor you to reach, your audience that you've built up. So you can offer visibility on social media. I'm sure we've all seen now many sponsored Instagram posts in our feed of some of our favorite people who have partnered with different products and things like that. But you can also do that through your YouTube channel. We sponsor a lot of different musician-run YouTube channels through your email list and more. So the upsides is you get some additional income. Sometimes you'll just work, especially initially. It could work where you're just getting free product or services from that company, which can help you save on some expenses. The downside is, to approach a company about sponsorship, you do have to have a pretty solid fan base and a pretty engaged fan base online for them to be interested. So this is a post actually from Soundfly, which is an online educational platform, and they have a blog called the Flypaper, and run by someone here in Montreal actually. And it's a great blog, tons of great resources. And they have a post called how to contact brands for sponsorships and collaborations that sort of goes more in depth into the strategy behind approaching a company to sponsor you. So big one, obviously, here in Canada. And it's interesting, I mostly do this presentation for artists in the United States, and music grants is just not the same down there as it is in Canada. We're quite fortunate to have the system that we do with music grants. So, the slide even says if they're available to you, they are available to you if you're in Canada. It's usually given out for writing new music, recording, or even going out on tour or showcasing. Travel costs to go showcase, that kind of thing. So again, it's additional income. Can be the downsides, as many of you probably have experienced, it can be very time consuming to apply. I used to be a grant writer for hire many years ago. Can understand how tedious it can be, and it's very competitive. I've also sat on juries for Factor and others where it's just the volume of applications can be overwhelming. So it is competitive. It can be time consuming, but obviously worthwhile to get in the system and put your hand into to try to get some grant money. So on our blog, we have links to a bunch of the granting organizations in the US, Canada, and United Kingdom if you're based there, and in Australia as well. Australia has a pretty extensive granting network as well. Number 20, so doing session work, which is something that comes naturally to a lot of musicians, but it's worth mentioning, just a way to make some extra money by doing session work for other musical projects. And if you have a flexible schedule, look to get hired and go out on tour. Again, once things get back to normal. I see it as such an upside of you get paid to play your instrument. You're making connections with other musicians, studios or venues. If you're trying to do it a little bit more full time, it can be challenging to find consistent work. But if you're really good, if you're reliable and available, I have some friends who make pretty good money, work for hire in studios and things like that, and sometimes touring if they're available. So this is a post by Ari Herstand, who you may have heard of. He's written a few books, and he's got a blog called Ari's Take. This is from his blog Ari's Take. It's 11 ways to get hired as a freelance musician. So it has some good tips on if you haven't done it, if you're curious and want to get into that world a little bit, there's some good tips in that post. And so we're about 50 minutes in here. So we're at the last revenue stream that I'll talk about today. And I'd be curious, in the chat, and if you have, of course, if you have questions, but if there's any revenue streams that I missed that you thought should have been in here. Always looking to learn myself. And so, but the last one here in the presentation is teaching music. So it's another great way to generate some revenue. We saw this happen a lot during the pandemic, where our members would, because they couldn't play live or tour, they offered to share their expertise with their fans through, online video lessons, whether it was pre-recorded or live through Zoom or other software. You can even get started by creating a little mini course that you can sell and then offer kind of one-on-one lessons in person, or, in this case, online. So again, you get paid to play your instrument, you're honing your craft. Some of the students, if you have young students, or some of maybe their parents become fans of your music as well. And there's this great resource written by Bree Noble, who's an artist and a teacher, and she wrote this guide to starting to teach online using a mini course as your starting point. So you're not trying to build this whole curriculum, but you're just starting out with your biggest strength, creating a little mini course around it, and then releasing that, and then going from there. If you are interested in sharing your knowledge with others. So again, the slides will be sent out by FMO. Thank you, Joel, to all attendees. So all the slides that have resources are all hyperlinked, so you can just click through to all the different guides and blog posts. And again, if you don't have a website or you're looking to build a new one, don't forget that we have that member benefit with FMO.
Oh my goodness, Dave! Thank you so much for all. That was a whole lot. That was at least 21 different revenue generation things. At least quite a few. Friends, we do have about 7 minutes left here for questions. I do see one here in the chat from Maddie, Dave. For social media monetization, I'm assuming it's the songwriter/master holder that's getting these royalties, but yes, would performers on the track receive them as well from Resound?
Good question, and I don't know, unfortunately. Sorry. Just being honest, I'm not quite sure. That it's a great question for your digital distributor and or Resound to find out if they do both.
Question related to film TV placement. My understanding is that access is controlled by music supervisors yet. So do you have any comments on how to access said music supervisors?
Well, first of all, hi, Derek. Yeah, so it's there's no simple answer to that, other than I can only speak. I don't have experience with it, but Nat J, that Bandzoogle member I spoke about, she goes to not only music conferences, she actually goes to more film conferences than music conferences, which is interesting. So she'll go to film conferences and network and meet and go to networking events and go to panels that have music supervisors, and gets to know that world. And you can find them online, do some sleuthing. She says she's found some music supervisors just doing some sleuthing online and Google searches and connecting with people on social media or LinkedIn, and just politely staying in touch with them. And then when the right opportunity presents itself, putting herself forward for that opportunity. But yeah, there are some services that have access to, so like they will have an opportunity and say, we have a music supervisor looking for X style of song. And then you apply for that. Some of them charge a fee. That's a whole other conversation. I think just do your own research on those different platforms, whether they're legit or not. Nat J explicitly said she's never used any of those, and she prefers to, find the people directly and go to events. And she said, actually, during the pandemic, with everything moving online, she's been able to do way more networking in that world through, Zoom and other online platforms. So I know it's not the most straightforward answer, but yeah, it can be a bit of a just starting to do research and putting together a database of different music supervisors that you can stay in touch with. And for her, that blog post that she wrote goes over the things that you need to have in place as an independent artist that will show a music supervisor that you're ready. It'll be easy to license your music. there won't be any hurdles or complications, things like that, because a lot of the times it's very time sensitive. Like music is one of the last things to get put into the production. So it's one of those things where like, oh, I need a song that's like this for this scene, like we need it yesterday. And so if you're on the Rolodex of like, oh, Nat J plays this kind of music, she might have a song, that kind of thing. So it took her time, took her years of networking and finding, making connections and developing those relationships and maintaining those relationships. But that's kind of how she did it.
Glad you mentioned networking, Dave, because yes, friends, you should definitely go to as many networking events as you can, including the FMO conference. Oh my God, shameless plug. That's going to come up. We're going to have more information on our in-person event that will be happening in the fall. Keep watching our newsletter and the website. Friends, we do have three more minutes for this webinar. So if you've got any other questions for Dave, please do let us know. We don't yet have more information, Derek, on where and when it will be. Will be coming soon. But I guess I've got a question, particularly for grants. Like you mentioned, that Canadians are much more lucky in that regard. In regards to there's more grants available and there's less of us to go after those grants. What would you say are some of the advantages that Canadians have over Americans in that regard, just with the grant system that we have?
Just having, for those very reasons you just stated, just having access to many different granting organizations, provincially and federally. And there's not as many musicians, although it is still quite competitive. I mean, there's still a lot of musicians that apply to them, but it's one of those things that it does take some time. You don't always get them, of course, because it is so competitive, but it can really change the financial complexion of your project if you do get a grant. So it's one of those things that any artist that I've worked with over the years, if they're Canadian, like, you gotta just get in that habit of every project, like, how can you use the grant system, whether it's songwriting, whether it's recording, whether it's marketing promotion, whether it's showcasing, touring. There's all these different programs across Canada, and a lot of provincial music associations have, on a smaller level, but they have amazing programs where they support their local artists as well. So it's definitely worth spending some time and getting to know all the different resources available to you wherever you're located.
All right, and we're going to give our last question to Ann Lederman, who is wondering what exactly vinyl to digital download is.
Oh, sorry, that was just maybe I abbreviated too much. Just a lot of the times when you press vinyl, you can include like a digital download card where they'll also get the digital version of the album, so that, because again, a lot of people buying vinyl may not even have a record player to play it. It's just I don't, but I own a bunch of vinyl from artists that I put up on the walls, and I like looking at it, but I don't actually play it. But they came with like little download cards. So it's probably a little bit less common now with streaming being so prevalent, but it's something that you can include as a courtesy so that they can also have the digital version of the album, and not just vinyl that they can't actually listen to. I saw one question. I forget the person's name, but Bandzoogle's not hiring at the moment. I saw that question pop up. But we just hired a few staff, a couple of staff members that are actually very well known in the folk community, who have run private showcase rooms and performed at Folk Music Ontario. We have a jobs page on Bandzoogle, and we hire somewhat regularly. So I would say just keep an eye on the jobs page on Bandzoogle, and opportunities do come up. It's it's an awesome Canadian privately owned, musician friendly company to work for. So yeah, if you are interested in working for Bandzoogle, keep an eye on that page. And we aren't currently, but like I said, we just finished a round of hiring in our support team, so it does come up.
Well, it sounds like it's a fun place to work, Dave. Thanks so much for your work on this and sharing all of these revenue generation ideas with everybody. As Dave said, I will be sending out all of the slides for this presentation as well as a link to the recording on our YouTube page by tomorrow, hopefully morning, if not early afternoon. You'll see it tomorrow, all registrants. Thanks again to our partners. That's Factor, SoCan, Canadian Heritage, Ontario Creates, and the Ontario Arts Council, and of course, our very good friends at Bandzoogle. With that, thanks so much, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Hopefully, it was helpful, and hopefully, see you later this year at the FMO conference.
Absolument. Au revoir.
Bye.